My mother told everyone I was crazy. She said it so often I almost believed her. She told my aunts, she told my cousins, she told the neighbors across the street with the perfectly trimmed hedges. She told my father during their weekly phone calls, where he lived 3 states away with his new wife and his new life. She told my husband. That was the part that hurt the most. She told my husband that I was unstable, that I had breakdowns, that I couldn't be trusted to remember things correctly. And because she was my mother, people believed her. I remember the exact moment I realized my marriage was over. It wasn't a fight or a confession or a screaming match in the driveway. It was a Tuesday, a stupid gray Tuesday in October, when the leaves were just starting to rot on the sidewalks. I was sitting in my car outside the grocery store, watching a woman struggle with 2 kids in a cart full of bags. She looked tired. She looked like me. And I thought about how my husband Mark hadn't touched me in 4 months. Not a hand on my back, not a kiss on the forehead, not even a lazy shoulder squeeze when we watched TV. 4 months of sleeping in the same bed with a canyon of cold sheets between us. I came home that afternoon with milk and bread and a box of frozen waffles that our daughter Lily refused to eat anymore because she said they were for babies. She was 8. Everything was for babies. Mark was already home, which was strange because he never got home before 6. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, and my mother was there too. She was sitting across from him with a mug of tea that she didn't drink because she hated my tea selection. She always brought her own bags, Earl Grey, like she was some kind of British aristocrat instead of a retired receptionist from Cleveland. The air in the kitchen felt wrong, too still, too careful. Mark closed his laptop when I walked in, and that was the first red flag I ignored, because I was good at ignoring red flags. I had been ignoring them for years. "Hi, honey," I said. He said hi back, but he didn't look at me. My mother looked at me with that face she made when she was about to say something painful wrapped in something sweet. It was the same face she made when she told me I had gained weight at my wedding dress fitting. The same face she made when she said maybe I shouldn't try so hard at work because men don't like women who seem desperate. "We need to talk," she said. I put the groceries on the counter. The milk was sweating through the bag. I remember thinking that I should put it in the fridge before it got warm, but I didn't move. I just stood there holding the bread like it was going to save me. "About what?" I asked. Mark finally looked at me. His eyes were tired. Not angry, not sad, just tired. Like he had been carrying something heavy for too long and he finally decided to put it down. That look told me everything before he even opened his mouth. He said he thought we should separate. He said he needed space. He said he had been feeling disconnected from me for a long time and he didn't know how to fix it anymore. The words came out smooth, like he had practiced them in the car. And maybe he had. Maybe he had been practicing for weeks. While I was putting Lily to bed, while I was folding laundry, while I was lying awake next to him wondering why he wouldn't touch me. I asked if there was someone else. He said no. He looked at my mother when he said it. That was the second red flag. My mother stood up and came to me with her arms open. She said she was so sorry. She said she loved me. She said she would help me through this. She said I just needed to get some rest and clear my head and maybe talk to someone about my moods. She said it so gently, so carefully, like she was handling a bomb. I didn't cry. I don't know why, but I didn't cry. I just nodded and put the bread on the counter and walked out of the kitchen and went upstairs to Lily's room. She was doing homework at her little pink desk. Spelling words. She looked up at me with her father's blue eyes, and I almost broke right there. "Mommy, why do you look sad?" she asked. I told her I wasn't sad. I told her I was fine. I told her to keep working on her words. That night, Mark slept in the guest room. I lay in our bed alone for the first time in 11 years, and I stared at the ceiling, and I thought about every fight, every silence, every moment I convinced myself things were okay when they weren't. I thought about the time I found a receipt for a hotel downtown. He said it was for a work conference. I believed him. I thought about the time his phone rang at midnight and he took it into the bathroom. He said it was his brother, drunk calling. I believed him. I thought about all the times my mother said I was too sensitive, too paranoid, too emotional. I believed her too. The separation became official 2 weeks later. Mark moved into an apartment across town. He said he wanted to stay close for Lily. He said he wanted to do this the right way, amicable, civil, for the sake of our daughter. Everyone told me how lucky I was to have such a reasonable ex-husband. My friends, my coworkers, my mother, especially my mother. She called him a good man every chance she got. A good man who just needed space. A good man who would come back when I got my head straight. And that was the narrative. I was the one who needed fixing. I was the one with the problem. I was the one who had driven him away with my anxiety, my mood swings, my inability to just be happy. I heard it so many times I started to believe it. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I had imagined the distance, the coldness, the way he looked through me like I was made of glass. Maybe I was the villain in my own marriage. But I wasn't crazy. And I wasn't the villain. I was just stupid enough to trust the two people who should have loved me most. It started with the bank account. 3 weeks after Mark left, I went to pay the mortgage, and the money was gone. Not all of it, but a lot of it. $23,000, wiped clean from our joint savings. I called Mark, and he said he had moved it into an investment account. He said he had told me about it. He said I must have forgotten. And then he said the words that would become his favorite weapon. You know how your memory gets when you're stressed. I called my mother to ask her if Mark had mentioned anything to her about the account. She sighed like I was being difficult. She said Mark was trying to protect our financial future. She said I should trust him. She said maybe I should talk to my doctor about my medication. I wasn't on any medication. That was the first time I felt the anger. Not the sad, lonely anger I had been carrying around like a purse. Real anger, hot and sharp and clear. I felt it in my chest like a second heartbeat. I hung up on my mother. I didn't say goodbye. I just pressed end and sat there in my quiet kitchen with the afternoon light coming through the windows, and I thought about how everyone in my life had decided I was the problem. My mother, my husband, maybe even my own daughter, who had started asking why Daddy didn't live with us anymore, in that careful way children have when they're parroting something they heard. I decided to fight back. Not loud, not crazy, just quietly, just smart. I called a lawyer the next day. Not the mediator Mark had suggested. Not the nice lady my mother recommended who went to her church. I found my own lawyer. A woman named Dana who had a reputation for being ruthless. Her office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a vape shop. It didn't look like much, but her reviews were savage. She wore cowboy boots with her suit, and she didn't smile when she shook my hand. Tell me everything, she said, and don't leave out the parts that make you look bad. I told her about the marriage, the distance, the separation, the missing money. I told her about Mark's phone calls at midnight, his unexplained weekends away, his habit of deleting his text history. I told her about my mother, how she had been whispering in Mark's ear for years, how she had always taken his side in every argument, how she had started showing up at our house whenever we fought, like she was his partner, not mine. Dana listened without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me with something that might have been respect. You're not crazy, she said, but they're going to try to make everyone believe you are. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to let them. The strategy was simple. I would keep being the good, quiet, confused wife who just wanted to understand what went wrong. I would agree to therapy, like my mother suggested. I would let Mark control the small things, like visitation schedules and shared expenses. I would document everything, every text, every email, every phone call, every sideways comment about my mental state. I would build a case without anyone knowing I was building it. For 6 months, I played the part. I went to a therapist who specialized in high-conflict divorce. She helped me see the patterns I had been blind to for years. The gaslighting, the isolation, the way Mark and my mother worked together to undermine my confidence. My therapist wasn't fooled by the narrative. She had seen it before. She called it domestic gaslighting. She said it was more common than people realized. I started keeping a journal. Not the fuzzy feelings kind. Evidence. Dates, times, locations. Every time Mark changed the story. Every time my mother told me I remembered something wrong. Every time they talked to each other in front of me like I wasn't there. The breakthrough came on a Friday night in March. Lily was at a sleepover. Mark was supposed to pick her up the next morning. I was alone in the house going through boxes in the garage, looking for old tax returns. I found a shoebox of Mark's bangs he had left behind. Receipts, old phone chargers, a stack of notes from his work notebook. I almost threw the whole box in the trash, but something made me flip through the notes first. There was a page with my mother's phone number circled. That was weird, but not crazy. She was his mother-in-law. He had her number, but there was also a date, July 14th, 3 months before he left me, and a time, 7 p.m., and a note that said, dinner at Meridian. The Meridian was a restaurant downtown, expensive, romantic, the kind of place you took someone you were sleeping with, not your mother-in-law. My hands started shaking. I took a picture of the note with my phone. Then I kept digging. I found more. Receipts from lunches at places I had never been. A parking stub from a garage near my mother's apartment. A sticky note with her new cell phone number written in his handwriting, even though he already had her old number. And at the bottom of the box, a single earring. Gold. Small. The kind my mother wore. I sat on the cold garage floor and I let myself feel the truth for the first time. Not suspicion. Not paranoia. Truth. My husband and my mother had been having an affair. Maybe not physically, I didn't know yet, but emotionally, secretly, betraying me together, one whispered conversation at a time. I called Dana the next morning. She listened to everything. Then she told me to go to a forensic accountant. She told me to pull phone records. She told me to stop playing nice. The phone records were devastating. For 2 years, Mark and my mother had been talking almost daily, sometimes multiple times a day. Calls at night, calls early in the morning, calls that lasted hours. There were gaps in the records too, gaps where they must have been using other phones or messaging apps. The pattern was clear. They weren't just talking about me, they were planning something. The forensic accountant found the rest. Mark had been siphoning money for 18 months, small amounts at first. $50 here, $100 there, but it added up to over $80,000. Some of the money went to a credit card I didn't know about, a card in his name only. The charges were for hotels, restaurants, and a jewelry store downtown, a store where my mother bought her jewelry. I confronted Mark at his apartment 2 days later. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I laid the evidence on his kitchen counter like I was dealing cards. Phone records, bank statements, receipts, the note from the shoebox. He turned pale. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. "It's not what you think," he said. "Then tell me what it is," I said. He couldn't. He just stood there with his hands in his pockets and his eyes on the floor. After a long time, he said, "Your mother is going to be very upset about this. Like I was the one hurting her. Like I was the villain in their story." I left without saying another word. I drove straight to my mother's apartment. She lived in a nice complex near the mall, the kind of place for widows and divorcees who wanted to feel safe. I buzzed her unit and she opened the door wearing a silk robe and her gold earrings, the matching one to the earring I found in the shoebox. She looked at my face and she knew. I could see it in the way her eyes flickered, just for a second. Then she put on her concerned mother mask and invited me in and asked if I had taken my medication. I didn't go inside. I just stood in the hallway and I told her I knew. About the calls, about the money, about the earring, about everything. I told her I had proof. I told her I was going to destroy them both in court. She left. Actually left. She said no one would believe me. She said I had a history of mental instability. She said Mark would testify that I was abusive and paranoid and unfit to be a mother. She said she would back him up. She said they had been preparing for this for a long time. I believed her. becoming someone else, somewhere else, where nobody knew my name or my story, or the sound of my mother's voice telling me I was crazy. But I didn't walk into the ocean. I went to therapy. I kept my journal. I showed up for every court date, every deposition, every soul-crushing hour of legal warfare. Dana was a bulldog. She deposed Mark for 6 hours. She deposed my mother for 4. She brought in experts who testified about gaslighting and financial abuse and the specific ways manipulators use mental health narratives to discredit their victims. The day of the final hearing was hot, July in the city. The courthouse air conditioning was broken, so everyone was sweating in their professional clothes. Mark wore a blue suit I had bought him for our 10th anniversary. My mother wore a white dress and her gold earrings. She smiled at me when I walked in, a cold, sharp smile that said, "You've already lost." Judge Morrison was an older woman with gray hair and reading glasses on a chain. She didn't smile at anyone. She didn't make small talk. She just listened. For 3 hours, she listened to our lawyers argue about money and custody and the nature of my mental state. She listened to Mark describe my mood swings and my memory problems and my irrational jealousy. She listened to my mother testify about the time I had a breakdown at a family dinner. She called it a breakdown. I called it crying in the bathroom after my mother told me I was raising Lily wrong. Then it was my turn. Dana put me on the stand, and I told the truth. All of it. The loneliness in my marriage, the way Mark pulled away, the phone calls with my mother that left me feeling hollow and broken, the missing money, the earring, the note in the shoebox, the years of being told I was too sensitive, too emotional, too crazy to trust my own mind. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but I didn't. I just talked, quietly, steadily, like I was reading from a book. When I finished, Judge Morganson looked at Mark. Then she looked at my mother. Then she asked to see the evidence again, the phone records, the bank statements, the photos I had taken of the shoebox contents. She studied each piece like she was solving a puzzle. The silence in the courtroom was thick enough to choke on. I could hear someone tapping a pen. I could hear Mark's breathing, shallow, fast. I could hear my mother shifting in her seat. Judge Morganson took off her glasses. She set them on the bench, and then she spoke in a voice that was calm and measured and utterly without mercy. She said she found Mrs. Mark's testimony credible and detailed. She said the documentary evidence was overwhelming. She said Mr. Mark had engaged in a pattern of financial and emotional abuse designed to destabilize his wife and gain leverage in the divorce. She said the communications between Mr. Mark and the respondent's mother revealed a coordinated effort to undermine the respondent's mental health and parenting capacity for the purpose of gaining an advantage in custody proceedings. She turned to my mother. She said it was the most disturbing case of parental betrayal she had seen in 25 years on the bench. My mother stopped smiling. Her face went slack. Mark put his head in his hands. I sat perfectly still and let the words wash over me like rain. Judge Morrison awarded me full custody of Lily, with supervised visitation for Mark until he completed a psychological evaluation. She ordered Mark to repay the $87,000 he had stolen, plus legal fees. She issued a restraining order preventing my mother from contacting me or Lily without court permission, and she referred both Mark and my mother for investigation regarding potential charges of fraud and conspiracy. The courtroom emptied slowly. Mark left without looking at me. My mother tried to approach, but the bailiff stopped her. She called my name. She said she loved me. She said she was sorry. She said I had misunderstood everything. I walked past her without a word. I walked out of the courthouse into the blinding July sun. I sat down on the granite steps, and I put my face in my hands, and I finally cried. Not sad tears, not happy tears, just tears. Years of them, decades of them. All the tears I had swallowed because I was told good girls didn't make a fuss. Dana sat down next to me. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't say, "It's gonna be okay." She just sat there with her cowboy boots on the hot concrete and let me cry. It took a long time to rebuild. Months of therapy for me and Lily, together and apart. Months of learning to trust myself again. Months of waking up in the middle of the night and reminding myself that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't broken, that I wasn't the villain in someone else's story. Mark moved away. He sent cards to Lily sometimes. She stopped opening them after a while. My mother tried to reach out through relatives and old friends, but I cut off anyone who carried her messages. I changed my phone number. I moved to a different part of the city. I built a new life from the rubble of the old one. Lily is 12 now. She knows the truth. Not all of it, not the ugly parts, but enough. She knows her grandmother hurt me. She knows her father made bad choices. She knows that none of it was her fault. I made sure of that. I broke the pattern. I stopped the cycle. I gave my daughter something I never had, a mother who believes her. People ask me if I forgive them, my mother, my ex-husband. I don't have an answer. Forgiveness feels like a word other people use. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I know I don't need to. I don't need to forgive to heal. I don't need to understand to move on. I just need to keep walking. The anger is still there sometimes, a low hum in the background. But it's not the hot, sharp anger from that day in my kitchen. It's something else, something colder and steadier. It reminds me of who I am. It reminds me of what I survived. It reminds me that I am not crazy. I never was. I was just a woman who loved people who didn't deserve it. And that doesn't make me crazy. That just makes me human.